Well, there are many people in our society who need constant care, whether it's an elderly person or a handicapped individual. Those who provide the necessary care for these people put an incredible amount of love and sacrifice in. So, joining us from Michigan to discuss this more is Jessica Ronne. She is a mother of 8, a caregiver advocate, and the director of the Lucas Project, and also the author of Caregiving with Grit and Grace. Just to add more to her list there. Great to have you with us today, Jessica. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It sounds like you have your hands full.
I do.
Okay.
I'm trying to sort that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, maybe give us a little snapshot of what your book is all about and the style of your book as well.
Yeah, my book is Caregiving with Grit and Grace. It's 100 days of hope and encouragement. They are short daily readings for caregivers and caregivers in all capacities, all walks of life. It's not just necessarily for caregivers of disabled children. I also lost my first husband, so I'm very familiar with being a caregiver to a spouse with a terminal illness as well. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to write this book and to share it with all the caregivers in the world.
Wow. And I was going to say, like, much of the content of your book does come from your own life experiences as a caregiver. Can you maybe share a little bit of your personal story?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I've been a caregiver to my 20-year-old son, Lucas, who is profoundly disabled and he will require care for the rest of his life. I was a caregiver for 3 years to my late husband, Jason, as he battled brain cancer. And recently kind of even came to the realization that I've been in a caregiver role since I was about 2 years old. I am the oldest of 12 children. When I was 2, my mom had twins, and I have all these pictures of me like holding holding one of the babies, caring for the baby. So for some reason, God in his wisdom decided to make me sort of a forever caregiver. And it's a role that I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm entirely comfortable with, but I've tried to stay obedient and just be as faithful as I can to the calling.
Yeah, well, Jessica, I have to say that you seem so positive. And I mean, it's not a lot in life that a lot of people would necessarily want to volunteer for, but it sounds like he gave it to the right person. The way that you're able to kind of share your wisdom with others, there must be times when the load can feel overwhelming. How do you respond in those times?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even when my husband Jason was going through cancer, anger was my fuel. And, we can tap into different fuels as caregivers, and it was an unhealthy fuel, but anger's adrenaline too, and it kind of gets you through those moments. I was a mom with 4 young children, 6 and under, and a dying husband. So I had to tap into something. And as I've aged and matured, I've figured out that there are healthier fuels to tap into. But definitely my faith, and that's included wrestling with God on occasions and saying, I don't understand why you would give me all these brain issues. My late husband had brain cancer, and 6 weeks later, my son had brain surgery. So it was just like one thing after another there for a while. And just at the end of the day, saying, you are Lord and I am not. I don't understand it, but you are sovereign. And so I have to just trust your plan for my life.
Oh, absolutely. I can imagine people in that situation. Burnout must be really rampant, and respite care isn't always available. So, what's your advice for caregivers? It's important to take breaks at time, isn't it? Just to make sure you don't burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. And I know a lot of us sort of have this martyr syndrome where we feel like we're the only one who can care for our loved one. But I would just encourage caregivers to try to drop that martyr mentality. I'll often say you're no good to anybody if you're dead. So you have to take care of yourself so that you can adequately take care of your loved one. And then I would say to the world at large, caregivers, we're exhausted. We are depressed, we're stressed, we're isolated, we're exhausted. Reach out and offer something. You don't necessarily have to offer to, care for our disabled child, but, use your gifts in some way, make a meal or do some yard work or offer to do laundry. Or I once had a woman come over to my house and cut all of my kids' hair right in the comfort of my home so that I wouldn't have to leave my husband, who wasn't doing so well at that point. But I would just really encourage everybody to reach out to the caregivers they know and just offer to step in and help in some way.
That's a really great example of what friends and neighbors can do and can offer to help these caregivers that are just undergoing so much, because it's so much time that they're giving, energy, blood, sweat, tears, everything, you name it. It's just so hard to even imagine what these caregivers are going through. And now, Jessica, in your book, you mentioned that it's easy to complain. So, how do you stay away from complaining? Because that can really get you down too and put you in a really negative mindset.
Yeah, how do you stay away from complaining? I think I often give myself permission to say it, if not
Mm.
even to people. I think that's what the admonishment is, not to necessarily complain to everybody, on social media, because these are sacred moments. These are holy moments as you care for this individual. But to even allow yourself permission to say it, to voice it to maybe a trusted friend or your husband or the Lord, to get it out of your system, because I do think that those thoughts can fester too and can actually manifest in negativity and illness or depression or whatever down the road. So I think allowing yourself permission to state it, face it, and then it is what it is. Get yourself up and continue on with your day. But to get that, to release it out of your body in some way, I think is really healthy.
Yeah. Speaking of allowing yourself permission, I would imagine that a lot of caregivers maybe feel the guilt complex about taking time for themselves away from that person. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? How important that is? And
Yeah, I
that
think
you're
it
not being
goes
selfish, basically.
right. Right. I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You're no good to anybody if you die because you didn't take care of yourself. So take those moments. Even in all of my caregiving over 47 years, I try to walk every single day. It's just the way I kind of shake the stress out of my body. It's, my meditation, my prayer time. It's me time. It's me with nature and just getting out into the elements. And it's almost metaphorical of life and of this caregiving journey. We just walk through it step by step. And that's all we can do. We just have to stay present and focused. But yeah, to find whatever that is for you, if it's, yoga or taking a dance class or going on a date with your spouse or walking, try to prioritize that at least somewhat consistently, so that you can get those breaks that you really do deserve and need.
Yeah, good advice. You mentioned your son, Lucas. So, how has living with Lucas impacted the lives of your other children? Because you have other children as well that you care for.
Yeah, we have a few. We have 7 other children
A
and
few.
a few. Lucas is, well, we have 8 total. You
Wow.
know, People ask that often, and they probably had to grow up a lot faster. And we see such a level of independence and compassion and care that they have towards other people with disabilities or towards the elderly. Seven of my kids lost a parent to brain cancer as well. So they we talk about this a lot, and it's just part of their story. It's part of their journey, and it's up to them whether they're going to do something positive with this part of their story or something not so positive. And so far we've just seen a lot of positivity and compassion and care come out of all of them. And being, Luke's sibling. And that's not to say that they all are like completely enamored with him and would drop everything that they're doing to stay home and help with him. We do have a couple of kids who are wired that way, but we have a couple who are definitely not wired that way. But they still love their brother and they'll help out wherever they're able to. And I think it's just made them better people because he's been their brother.
Yeah, exactly. He's been a blessing. So, in what ways has Lucas been a blessing to other people who encounter him? Obviously, the siblings all live with him. That's a whole different story. But, there's other people in your lives.
Yeah, I think everybody would just say his life has just brought so much hope and encouragement. I look at my son, who is the most humble human being on the face of the earth. He doesn't care if anybody ever knows his name or knows anything about him. And I just look at all of the amazing things that his story has brought forth, with this book, Caregiving with Grit and Grace, two documentary projects, a nonprofit called the Lucas Project that, helps and supports other special needs families. So Lucas is exactly as the Lord intended Lucas to be, and his life has just brought so many positive changes to the world. And I just think it's such a blessing to be his mom.
So, Jessica, you mentioned the Lucas Project. So maybe explain what that is a little bit and what you do.
Yeah, the Lucas Project started when we lived in rural Tennessee. Lucas was going through puberty. He was becoming very aggressive. He's nonverbal. His behaviors were intensifying. And we could not find any respite or support or resources or anything for our family. My husband ended up in ER twice with panic attacks that resembled heart attacks. And we were just desperate for help, for a break. And I remembered my promise to him as a baby that I would one day start a nonprofit in his honor, always thinking that the nonprofit would help children. And when I realized how desperate we were for a break, I realized that the nonprofit had to help the caregivers. So I just Googled how to start a nonprofit, printed off the paperwork, filled it out, sent it out, and a couple months later, apparently I was founder of a nonprofit. It's not that difficult. And so we started offering monthly respite days to special needs families in rural Tennessee. We partnered with a local school who allowed us to use their space. And we did that very successfully until COVID. And then we had to kind of shift and reorient our priorities and what that was going to look like. But currently, we are now back in Michigan, and we are starting respite days for special needs families again in January. We offer recognition through our film projects. We send out care packages nationally to caregivers who are nominated. We also partner with a local children's hospital. We bring these care packages down to parents in ICU with their children. What else do we do? We have a podcast. So just anything that we can do to help these families in some way, we try to reach out and serve these families.
That's incredible. What's in the care package? I'm just curious.
It's a box full of luxury type items, like respite type items, journals and books and coffees and teas and spa items, just anything that would say, we see you. Here's a box of encouragement. And we do have an Amazon wish list on our website where people can send in items for those as well.
That's incredible. Now, in your book, you write about the need to keep an eye on the big picture. So, what's the big picture to you, Jessica?
It's eternity, and it's being obedient to what God has called me to do. I'll often say, we may not necessarily know why we have to go through trials and hardships this side of eternity, but I do believe it will all make sense someday when we get to heaven. And ultimately, our lives are a living sacrifice, and it's a surrender to what God wants us to do in order to bring glory to His name. So I try to be obedient. Sometimes I buck the system a while before I end up being obedient, but I do have that eternal perspective in mind.
Do you think that's important for any caregiver to kind of have that faith just to get through what's facing you on a daily basis?
I do. I consider it holy work. Our caregiving is a holy offering. It's the most holy work we can do this side of eternity, and I think we've kind of lost track of that. We enter the world needing care, and most likely will leave the world needing care. And we're fortunate if we don't require it in between. And somehow we've gotten away from this care model and valuing care and respecting care and those who give care. And I think in some ways we've gotten away from what it means to be human because we don't value care anymore.
Interesting. Jessica, any final encouragement for caregivers and their friends and families?
Yeah, I would say, for caregivers, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the future. Is my loved one going to be healed or go into remission, or will they die, or what does the future look like for my disabled adult child? And I would just really encourage caregivers to try to stay present, try to take the caregiving journey step by step, like that walking analogy, and just try not to get so caught up in the what ifs, because I think often getting caught up in those what ifs removes you from the present beauty of the work that you're doing.
Great advice. Looks like we're out of time here, but Jessica, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today. We really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Jessica Ronne is the author of Caregiving with Grit and Grace. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.